Or I don't know how I have missed the boat, Mark, on hearing your testimony and hearing what God has done through this band and this team of yours. But I guess that's why the documentary is coming out, so we can maybe shed light on a little bit more of everything that's going on.
Yeah, when they first talked to me about making a documentary, I remember telling them, I was like, well, I don't really have any car chases or any kind of stuff that's, I don't really have some crazy, thing. I'm just normal kid growing up. And I think that was kind of the point, is that I was maybe even a little less than ordinary. And it just shows you that God uses all of us.
Yes, we're going to get into that specifically. Um, One of the things I wanted to ask you is obviously you have this big music career, successful music career, but the priority for the last several decades was being a youth pastor. I think I know the answer, but I just wanted you to talk a little bit about why youth? Because obviously your ministry in music, you could have been a main pastor, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Why youth?
Yeah. Well, to me, it's just the thing that God put a burden on me for. I think most people in church, the thing that we find ourselves seeing missing in the church, or that we tend to be critical of, is usually because we see the church through the lens of our spiritual gifts, our personality, and how God's put us together. And I think that's why some people will go into church and say, this church isn't doing missions right. Or another church will say, well, this church needs to work on worship, because we kind of see the hole that we're supposed to fit. So for me, I thought it was going to be music. Music was what I sang with my dad in church, and I didn't really have anything else to go on. I just knew I was supposed to do something in the church. I didn't really even know what it was. And it was in Bible college that I got to go and lead worship for a youth group at an event, like 50 kids, more kids than I'd ever seen in one room. But that's where I discovered that I feel where they are, because I was only like 21 at the time. But I remember all of it. And I thought, man, they're really struggling. And I know what they're still thinking about. I know what they're still fighting, the voices they're hearing. I think these are my people. And I think because I've been in student ministry for so long, I still think like they do. I still hear sermons like a kid would hear it. I'm going, okay, he's not catching that, or this isn't making sense, or, all this kind of stuff. I think it's just the way I'm put together.
Yeah. Speaking of the way that you're put together, what I absolutely love about this and about you being so vulnerable and sharing your story is, that you talk about your learning struggles as a kid and having ADD and dyslexia. And there are so many families in this boat that are
Hmm.
trying to figure out, not only families, but I think people that struggle with it themselves. And I think you're hitting a nerve at this particular time. I don't, I just feel like more kids are getting diagnosed with it now. I think we're
Yeah.
learning a little bit more about these, learning disabilities as well. But I just wanted you to touch on that a little bit, because I think a lot of families are going to benefit from hearing how God still used you in a mighty way, despite how you just really admitted you felt so unworthy and really just not smart enough to do anything.
My my school was doing the best they could do. The school I went to, and there just wasn't a lot of learning on learning differences, right? Because I just learned different, and and the way that a school is set up, they've got 30 kids in their classroom, and they've got to go with the goers. They This is how you teach a group. This is how a group tests, and this is how it works. So they have to go with the herd, right? But if you don't learn like that, or read like that, or any of those things, you don't process the same way, you're going to fall behind. So when I was a kid, I think it was about third or fourth grade, they started kind of realizing I wasn't keeping up, and so I was put in the learning disabilities class. And I wore that title for all the way into college, and it took a while for me to see that I just learned different. Like, you don't give me written instructions on how to do something, and you don't tell me either. You don't just, here's 8 steps that you need to do. I'm going to learn by watching you. You got to show me. I'm a show me kind of guy. We came up with a big word, kinesthetic, several years back. But there's several different ways to learn. And if your kid's in school, they're going to struggle because if they don't learn the way the herd learns, they're going to have a hard time. Schools now are doing amazing stuff to help, and they're seeing all that. That's where you're seeing all the testing. But even the word dyslexic, I'm dyslexic also, and there's 70 kinds of dyslexia. To say somebody's even ADD is almost going to need new words soon because there's just so many kinds of how we learn. And
So, what's your message of hope for someone that may be watching us now and hearing this? Because again, I mean, it's a huge population right now that's struggling with this. I think you're going to hit a nerve.
for me, I felt less. Always felt less, and I still feel that because I don't stick in conversations very long. You tell me some things, and about the second thing you said, that's what I'm thinking about the rest of the conversation. You've moved on. I'm still back here, so I look like I'm not paying attention. I'm just really paying ultra attention to the first thing, right? And I think learning that there's so much good information out there about ADD, and that to see how they process that kind of stuff is so good. But as far as for me, I felt like God wanted me to be in the church, and I knew that was going to put me up in front of people, and that scared me to death. And I just thought in my head, like, I don't think I ever made a team I tried out for. I don't think I didn't even make the choir. I tried out for the performance choir as a senior and didn't even make the singing group, like nothing. So I think the second cut in basketball once. But so I always kind of felt like I didn't make anybody's team down here. If God's going to use people to reach the world, he's going to need people smarter than me. So for me, I sat back in the church and I would just kind of go, well, that guy's awesome, and she's smart, he's talented. Those would be the people that God would do something with. And God just kept coming to me and saying, I want you to do something in the church. And I put so many labels in my head that I wasn't listening to him. And I remember starting to read scripture, and I really feel one of the first songs that ever got my attention was Stephen Curtis Chapman, and it was a song, "His Strength is Perfect When Our Strength is Gone," and such an honest thing. And I'd hid my whole life, and didn't want anybody to know. And uh, it led me to the scripture, which is what I want all the music that I write to do. It led me to 2 Corinthians 12, where Paul has a thorn and he's praying God will take it away. Like, this thing is keeping me back. He prayed 3 times that God would take it away. And God said to him, my grace is sufficient for you, and my power is made perfect in your weakness. So at that point, Paul says, hey, I'm going to start boasting now, but I'm going to boast in my weakness. And that's why any concert you come to, um, you're going to hear more about why you should not think that I'm cool the entire concert. You need to know, you know, you need to know we're not cool. You need to know that uh, if there's a way to mess this whole being saved thing up, we've cracked the code. I'm bumping my head on life every day. And I've just learned that people that don't have it all together, I don't mind listening to them talk. And I think weaknesses that I hid for so long, God didn't start using me until I started showing my weakness. And that will never look good on a t-shirt, right? Because it's like, just do this, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we're taught, especially men,
Yeah.
you never let them see you sweat. You don't act like you got any weaknesses. If you don't understand what you just read, I ain't gonna tell you that. I'm gonna act like I got the whole thing. I'm gonna get out there, mess it all up. 'Cause that's what I'm gonna do, right? And I think the pressure on us to act like we've got it together is actually holding us back, and it's not helping the gospel. But transparency helps people see this is how big God is. This is how big His love is.
I wanted to get your thought too on the power of music because I thought it was
Mm,
so interesting. I feel like as I've become a mom now and I see the effect of what we consume, I know what it did for me as a teenager as well. And
yeah.
music is one of those rare things. I just heard this the other day and it just keeps, a couple months ago actually, and it just stuck with me so bad about music. It almost it's one of those few things that touches our soul.
Mm,
Like it can pack such an emotional connection, and
yeah.
that can be dangerous for bad music, for the lyrics and the things that we're letting consume our mind, but then it also, look what God can do when we're,
Mhm,
using scripture in songs like what you do and pointing, like you
yeah.
said, pointing people back to the scripture. It's so important what we are allowing kids to consume,
Yeah.
anyone really to consume.
I think that starts with what you allow them to be exposed to. And, my kids, uh, they didn't get a phone till they were 16. And when they did get the phone, it didn't do anything but make calls. And you weren't on the internet. You're not walking around with the world in your pocket, because I'm not going to put a good kid in a bad situation. And nobody else is fighting for him. Nobody. Everybody's trying to get to him, you know? And so I think we've got to, as parents, we got to be careful what they're putting in their head. But then as parents, we got to be careful what we're putting in our head. And when it comes to music, man, your music is really either who you are or who you want to be. And you can say what you want. I'm not here to be legalistic. I'm not here to say this is a sin or not. I'm here to say, as a matter of wisdom, I need to make a goal that most of the things that I'm watching and listening to are urging me into the new life I'm trying to live, and they're not dragging me back to the old life I'm trying to leave. Right. So I think that's not a let's make this rule and it's a sin to listen to this. But I think it is a question of wisdom and saying, Father, what's best? You know, in light of where I want to go in my life, I want to honor you. I want to have a Christian marriage. I want all these things. Okay, well, on wisdom, there are some things I probably need to stay away from. And but kids, man, you don't put the world in your kid's pocket and tell them not to look at it. That's crazy.
Last question here, because I loved, it wasn't necessarily in the documentary. I think I heard it in your testimony on another video I saw of yours, but I just loved it and how when God really spoke to your heart, I believe you were just changing the radio station and you just happened to hear, was it two pastors that were talking and you said, listen, I grew
Yeah,
up in the church. It wasn't like,
yeah,
I hadn't heard this before, but for whatever reason, God used that particular moment, those particular guys that you said, even it wasn't even that they were extra special or anything. But I just love this because, like myself, I can fall into this trap where you think, what we do maybe doesn't matter all the time, or we
yeah.
just have to trust God with our audience. And if He's given us a call and a mission, that God will use it. And I
Mm-hmm.
just love that He used those two men, and look at the
Mm-hmm.
fruit that has been produced since then.
Yeah. It was on a secular station, and at a certain time on Sunday night, late, Um, it was called Power for Today. And it was just like that. And two pastors talk about everyday situations, that kind of thing. And then these pastors got on and they're like, hey, this is so and so, and this is Todd, that kind of thing. And there was nothing cool about it, like nothing. But I could never turn the radio off. I was always drawing, doing my art, doing whatever depressed thing I was, into at the time, listening to whatever on the radio. Here's some great music to jump off a bridge to. That's kind of what you do. You want to be depressed. You want everything around you to be depressed. And so these guys were it just threw me off because they were like, well, hell, well, here's Jill. She lives in so and so town. And Jill, what you got for us today? And she was just like, well, dealing with this situation at work. This is what they're doing to me. This is how I feel. This and this and this. And then they just said, well, that reminds me of something I read in Philippians, and just read him some scripture. And I was like, it never occurred to me. It's not like my church didn't teach it. It didn't hit me yet that life isn't, I thought life is over here. and then you do baseball on Tuesday, Thursday, and then here's that world, and there's school world, and then we go to church, and there's these church people in the world, and they all stay in their place. Everything has a drawer, and suddenly they were talking about real life, and it hit me that you can pray about that. You can pray about your boss. You can pray about a friendship. There's verses for that, and so I just started listening every week, and God really met me there through those guys talking. And I wish I could find them somehow, and but I was in some dark places.
Well, that's what I love, that God can use. We don't know what tools he's gonna do. All he's asking us is to be obedient, and if there's one person that it helps, and that's what I just loved about your story, is then, it helped turn the light on for that, and then carry on after that.
It really did.
Mark, I appreciate your time. I've been telling everybody about this documentary that they need to see it and they need to bring their friends. And I just want to personally thank you for all that you have done and all that your band has done. And I know they're like another family to you. And it's just been such a blessing to watch it. So I'm so glad now that it's an actual documentary where we can track and see what God has been doing. So, but he's not done yet. That's the best part of it too.
The first 20 years.